Mitch McCott. This is Yuri Yao checking in. I hope everybody's doing well. Uh, okay. So I wanted to get on here and speak a little bit about the Pope and the doorways or portals he's opening on Christmas or Christmas Eve. Um, this has been in the news lately, and it looks like there's been a push towards people to look at this. Um, and just to give a heads up, a real heads up on what this is all about, I can tell you guys, um, I can tell you guys that I don't know. I can honestly say to you guys that I don't know what they're up to. But, with the history of the Catholic Church and the reality of who they actually are, we can do some really educated guessing on what this might be. So, with that disclaimer being said, I have no idea what these doors mean, what they are supposed to represent for, Catholicism, Christianity, or what their occultic. I did a little bit of research on this, and I deliberately didn't watch anybody else's videos because a lot of people have been doing videos on this. But I deliberately didn't watch anybody else's videos, and I just went and looked at the ritual itself and, what it entailed and all those things. And so, in the ritual, it appears that this ritual has been done already for almost 1,000 years, right? And apparently they've been doing it, or different permutations of this ritual, every 50 years since then. I think that at some point in time, they changed it to 25 years, that they were doing it in 25-year increments and calling it a jubilee, right? This is like a jubilee. And so I did find that there were references to um, Talmudism. This is Pharisaic worship, right? The Pharisaic style of Judaism, which we know to be Satanism. This accompanied with, the Jewish, what's it called? I can't even remember right now, but it's a sect of Jewish mysticism that that is, pretty popular among Hollywood circles. And I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's really Jewish occultism, which is just a form of Jewish Satanism. Um, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's not important. We don't fool with none of that anyway. So just a little bit of a background into the Catholic Church, and to get kind of to where we are. This is, my thing really is history, and I love to explain things in context so that when we see the things happening in front of us, we don't, necessarily, follow the mainstream narrative on it. So we can kind of get behind the scenes and to see what's going on by just knowing some of the history about a thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So, with that being said, the Catholic Church, we know, is not just an organization or a religious group, but it is another style. And I have to frame it this way because I can't really, you can't escape the concepts that the Bible portrays. You have to frame it in the way that the Bible portrays it. The Catholic Church is just another synagogue of Satan. Does that make sense to you guys? It is a synagogue of Satan. It's a false church, a false assembly, a false congregation. And we know it to be a false congregation because of the things that it's done in the past, right? So it's the Catholic Church that changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. And the reason why that they changed it from Saturday to Sunday is because they wanted to separate themselves from the Sabbath, from quote unquote Judaism, right? Well, you can't separate yourself from Judaism by not keeping the Sabbath. because the Sabbath isn't a Judaism thing, it's a scripture thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? But they're trying to, at that time, were trying to separate themselves from Jewish worship. And there was, in fact, a curse or a creed against keeping any festivals, feasts, or Sabbaths of the Jews that was adopted by the Catholic Church at an early stage. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we know, based on what the Catholic Church has done in the past, in the distant past, that they are set up for as a parallel synagogue of Satan. Do you understand what I mean? And if we, kind of get into like Catholic doctrine as to why they believe that they have the position that they have, um, it goes into Messiah telling Peter that upon this rock I will build my assembly. Upon this rock I will build my church. And forgive me if I'm butchering that text, but this is Messiah giving Peter the authority to design the worship style going forward. Do you understand what I mean? And not necessarily design it, but to control it, to have the keys to the kingdom, if you will. So the whole thing is that they align themselves after Peter, right? If you want to really get into where the deception comes in, the deception is that they say Peter was the first pope. Do you understand what I mean? And it goes a long way to seeing how psychologically a false system, a false system can insert itself into true doctrine. Do you understand what I mean? So once, and then here's the other thing, you guys. What does Catholic mean? Catholic means universal, you guys. So literally, if you are of the Catholic religion, this is, you can also say universal religion, because that's what it means. It means universal religion. And so you guys, going from Peter, they link their history to a disciple of Peter. And then that disciple had another disciple who was a Greek, right? Who was named, I think, Irenaeus or something like that. And then he had a disciple, and he had a disciple. And as you can see, it goes in this, Greco-Roman direction instead of a Hebrew one. And it's from there where the Catholic Church, the popes, Constantine, and all of these other, foreign entities link themselves in with the scriptures, because they have to do that. Otherwise, they have no authority to speak on it. You have to be linked in some sort of ancient way to the scriptures, or else then you don't have any authority to speak about it, right? And so this is how they do that. This is how they did that, through Messiah's words, misconstruing Messiah's words, and using a line of descent from Peter in disciples to basically make the connection backwards to the original 12, and of course with the Messiah leading them. And then we know that the history behind it could be tampered with as well. I haven't done my history into the validity of that connection, but even if you take what they've said for a given fact, out of the 12 disciples of Yahushua, one of them was a devil, right? One of them was a devil. So just imagine, out of that line, one of those men that were disciples of any of these descendants or, adherents of the disciples of Peter, if any one of them was like a Judas, then you have a line which could really turn into a really, crazy direction, which is what must have happened, because that's what we see. We see the Sabbath day in a universal church being changed to Sunday. We see the festivals of the scripture, the Leviticus 23 feast cycle, abolished in the minds of its adherents and replaced with a different feast cycle based on different things, right? So literally a universal religion is of true religion, right? So we have inserted, and we all know the history behind Christmas. It was Natalis Invictus, right? It was the birth of the sun. It was when the sun passed this specific point and then rose up again in its axis, right? In the zodiac, right? This is the uh, the philosophy behind Christmas, right? This is also supposed to be the day when the pagan entity, I think it was, and you guys don't repeat these pagan entity names. I'm a teacher, so I reserve the right to do that, or I call myself a teacher. And I teach my children, but and I ramble on to you guys too. Not anybody right now. I'm talking to myself right now, but eventually people can come back and if they need to check this out. But yeah, I fashion myself as a teacher, and as a teacher, sometimes to explain things so that people will know and understand. I do have to use these pagan entities' names. They are written in the scripture, some of them, and so there are so even though there's a commandment not to do this, not to say these names out of your mouth. There is a context for where that they can be said so that you can understand. Do you see what I'm saying? Just like if you're trying to tell somebody a cursed word or a cuss word, and you have to say the word in order to tell people not to use it, or maybe they heard it and don't know what it is, and now you have to explain it. So like that, right? And so the deity whose birthday it is supposed to be Mithra, who is an ancient Persian deity who is the equivalent to, I believe, one of the other, pagan deities in the pantheon of the Greeks and the pantheon of the Romans. And again, I don't want to use the names either too much because again, this is not the the path of research that you necessarily have to go down in order to get to the bottom of it. As long as you know who it's supposed to represent, then you should be good, right? So, so the December 25th day that everybody is associating with the Messiah is actually associated with an older pagan entity. And Messiah himself said, keep the Passover in order to remember me. Remember in Matthew chapter 20, uh, six. Um, so when we understand Passover, we have to understand it from a messianic perspective from that point on out. Maybe they didn't understand it in that fashion before, but it has the Messiah's name written all over it, right? The Messiah's presence written all over it, all the way since back to Egypt, right? All the way since then. Even the concept of deliverance, of salvation, emerges from our understanding of our deliverance from Egypt, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So this is important to know. As a believer in the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's important to know your history and the history of salvation. We remove that when we go through the Catholics, they put it and they have their remembrance of the Messiah on the pagan holiday that already existed since way back into the Persians. I believe that that deity is a Persian entity, right? And so we can see the falsehood in the Catholic Church. They make idols. This is what they do. There's a giant idol in South America. I can't remember. Is it Brazil? In Rio de Janeiro, the Christ, where the arms is like the big huge statue of quote unquote Jesus on top of a mountain that lightning always strikes. You see what I'm saying? That's what they do. That's what they're known for. They're idol makers. So this means that they cannot be true, right? There cannot be any truth to them. There has to be a perversion of the truth. Do you see what I'm saying? So that the images are different, the style is different, the holidays are different, the people are different. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is where all Christianity emerges from, and where all Christianity also retreats to. because your Protestant, your Baptist, and all of them who supposedly split from the Catholic Church are still in subordinate positions to the main church, which is under Catholicism. If you if you believe that all you need to believe in is to say the name of Jesus and believe that he died for your sins in order to make it into the kingdom of heaven, then that includes both Protestants and Catholics. So if you're a Protestant, all a Catholic would have to say is I believe, and then the Protestant would say, okay, well, you're in. And all the Protestant to the Catholic would have to say is I believe, and then the Catholic would have to say, oh, well, you're in. That's it. So both of those groups are the same group, and they are under the Pope, you guys. And they call Peter the first Pope, which is an egregious lie, right? An egregious lie. But so we see now that they are opening up these portals, right? I don't want to get too deep into the past. We know a lot about the Catholic Church. We know about the Jesuits, the secret military, the spy agency, the propaganda wing of the Catholic religion, right? These Jesuits who are priests, but they're priests in some sort of undercover fashion, right? To subvert, other organizations for the benefit of Catholicism. And the Catholic Church has made and broken empires for thousands of years now, or over, almost 2,000 years now, right? So hundreds of years for sure. So we understand that the wickedness of the world will be in a religious fashion. All of the ancient, wickedness are people that are in religions, right? People that are in pagan religions who believe themselves to be doing the right thing because they have this false deity telling them what to do, right? Or believe themselves to be, the most powerful so that they can do whatever they want, right? Because they are powered by this false entity. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is that. It's just a new iteration of it, and one that cannot help but to be attached to Hebrew culture, because after the Messiah appeared, truth came into the world. Do you see what I'm saying? The Messiah brought with him the spirit of truth. We're reading the book of John right now when it talks about the Comforter, right? And I love talking about this because, people understand it in this way, but they don't really know that they understand it in this way. So just basic biblical understanding, when the Messiah left, the Comforter came, right? The Spirit of truth, the Spirit of Elohim fell upon the disciples in Acts chapter 2 at Shabbat, right? And so from that point, the Spirit of truth has been in the world, which means, you guys, that people aren't going to be able to get away with the same stuff that they had been getting away with in the past. And that, for a fact, happened. See, this is the proof of Messiah that people don't recognize, that the world changed in the first century. The world changed. So something big happened. People that say that Messiah was a made-up figure, or that, maybe he was real, but none of this, fantastic supernatural stuff happened. Well, you better think twice, because he's saying some stuff that you need to pay attention to, because it's in your best interest. Because the Spirit of truth is in the world, right? At that point, before then, people didn't recognize that pagan religions were evil. They figured that, hey, you're killing people, you're sacrificing people, but you're doing that to an entity that's telling you to do that. That's telling you to do this thing for their benefit. And whether you believe it's evil or not, your moral compass is not going to go off the course of what your Elohim tells you to do. Your Elohim, not the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which means that they didn't have truth. That truth was not in the world at that time, only going through one family. There was one family that had the truth before Messiah. But since Messiah came and died and rose and went to Shamayim, now the Spirit of truth is in the world. And since the Spirit of truth is in the world, you can't get away with all that paganism. That's why you have most of the people on the planet right now who are of Abrahamic religions, because they recognize that's where the truth is, because the spirit of truth was there. The spirit of truth is there still. Do you see what I'm saying? The spirit of truth that ran through the disciples, Peter and John and all them, the spirit that came upon them is still active. And because it's been active, now we have an understanding of what paganism is. Before we didn't know, now we do. Now we know these idols are representations of false deities. We know that those false deities are demons. We know that those demons are run by the adversary, Shaitan. We know that Shaitan was kicked out of his house and sent down to earth, and that's why he's so mad. Right? We know all these things now because of Messiah, because Messiah opened this information up to the rest of the world. This is the information of the Hebrews. That's why you have Hebraic religion that is dominant in the planet. That proves that Hebraic religion is true, right? So no matter if you have three separate branches, which you do, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there's enough people in the world that have been gravitating, drawn to this truth in order for the Messiah's words to be true. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying, guys? These are things that we take for granted, not knowing these things, or not, or having lived with this information for 2,000 years. So that being said, now the adversary has to disguise himself in one of these truth-styled Hebraic, Abrahamic religions. And it just so happens he has three of them that he can choose from at any time, right? His people are all in positions in all of those different places. Do you see what I'm saying? Because you have to fight in the world to keep the truth from being out. You have to do it every generation. That's why you're going to always have the universal pictures with the globe on it. That's why, before every movie, you see the Universal Picture logo with that globe on it, because every generation has to be re-educated. And the generations past have to be strengthened in that miseducation so that they won't forget, right? Because the truth is in the world, right? And so that's why you have the Catholic Church with these idols and images and being able to change things, because they have to strongly assert falsehood over the truth. And they have to use this sort of psychology in order to do that. And speaking of the psychology, that's what I think this is. I think it's a ritual. I think it's a ritual that is designed to do something. But on top of that, with every ritual, with every working, or whatever you want to call it, whatever they call it, you have a psychological component to it in order to compel people into paying attention. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that doesn't leave out that this could be a real portal opening a gate to hell and unleashing a demon. Don't think that that can't be the case. But the fact that it's being promoted in the way that it is lets us know that our involvement is part of the ritual. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the psychological aspect that drives the strength of the ritual. That's why 9/11 was so powerful, because everybody's sitting there watching it. 9/11 was a ritual. Y'all, I don't know if you guys know this, but 9/11 was a sacrificial ritual to some pagan entity to do a thing. Because what happens in these rituals is that a thing is accomplished. And it's usually not like we talked about in the last video series, the UFO video series. When you see these rituals take place, people expect for there to be like a Loch Ness monster, or some sort of entity that just comes out of the portal, and now you can see it, and you then can say, okay, well, now it's attacking New York City or Rome or wherever. So that's not really how it works. What happens is these entities come forth, and conceptually the world changes. Do you see what I'm saying? The ideas distributed in the ritual have more power because of the ritual. You see what I mean? 9/11 was so strong to get people in America to react, to be able to go to war with a country that never did anything to America. That's the ritual. The 9/11 ritual was meant to send us into war in the Middle East. It was a ritual that was successful, and it even came equipped with a magic word. Because anytime you said the term 9/11, then people would react to it, put their hand over their heart. Oh, what a tragic time we're in. Do you see what I'm saying? It was done on that date to signify a magic spell that could be activated with a term. They call it neuro-linguistic programming. That's the scientific name for it. But if you look it up, it's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where you have loaded words, and those loaded words drive the mentality of the person that believes in them. And so that's what 9/11 was. That's what I think this portal opening ceremony is too. Because they're calling them portals, right? And they could just say doors. We all know that a portal and a door are the same thing. But when you say portal, we have the sci-fi definition of portal in our mind. So we just believe that, okay, well, they must be opening the gates of hell then. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that they're not, because I still do believe that's what they're doing. It's just not going to be the entity that you'll see and, be afraid of. It's the concepts. So whatever concepts are being pushed right now, are being formulated in the minds of the people, this is what that's associated with. Do you see what I'm saying? The concepts that are being taught right now in the mainstream media are what this ritual is about. Do you understand what I mean? It's a Jubilee ritual. So supposedly it happens every 25 years, no matter what, right? But this time, I'm sure that there's something else or other things that will be associated with the opening of these gates. Do you understand what I'm saying? A conceptual change in the world based on what this ritual is doing, based on what the purpose of this ritual is doing. And don't put it past for the portals to be connected to the UFOs, you guys. Don't put it past for both these psychological events, because that's what they both are, to be connected one to the other, for you to think one way and one thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because who knows why, they're doing what they're doing with the drones and all that. Who knows what the end goal, we know what the end goal is the one world government with the alien creatures that are supposed to be in charge of it, right? Which is the actual anti-Messiah. But who knows what step they're in right now. You see what I'm saying? And whatever that step is, maybe is strengthened by whatever ritual the Pope is doing. Therefore, they allowed these two things to happen at the same time. They coordinated these two events in order to strengthen one another. Because what do you think of when you think of a portal being opened? You think of an entity coming out, right? And what do we see now is entities or UFOs or aliens being presented to us in this fashion, right? Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost as if they want us to subconsciously link these two concepts without saying it out loud, right? And so really, I only had that much. Okay. Shalom, shalom, Aki. How you doing, brother? I didn't see that you was on there at first. Shalom, shalom. But I was asked to come on here and speak about the portals that are being opened, the doors that are being opened by the Pope on New Year's Eve, or not New Year's Eve, but Christmas Eve. And, we're really at the tail end of doing that. So you guys, if you have any questions about this topic, there's a lot to it, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm missing that maybe puts the pieces together even clearer. But what it seems like to me, just a bit of a recap, is that this is another psychological event, and this particular psychological event has been coordinated with another one, which are the propaganda of these drones, these UFOs, being sighted on the East Coast of America. I think the two are parallel propaganda instruments that are made to feed off one another in the minds of people without even really having to connect them on a conscious level. I think people connect them on a subconscious level in order to strengthen one another in whatever plan that they've got going on. And now, again, that doesn't mean that there aren't literal things coming out of these portals. Um, but it does mean that conceptually, whatever we already believe in or whatever deception is already in place is getting ready to be stronger. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because now, just imagine if a pope or a powerful imam um, sanctifies the aliens. You see what I'm saying? Or even confirms them as being, you know, righteous beings, ancient righteous beings that may be like God or plural gods, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So let's see. Shalom, brother. Shalom, shalom, Lewis. So I really don't have any other information on the openings, on the portal openings, the door openings by the Catholic Church. I started off with the video with saying I really don't know what they're doing. And that's the of course the whole truth of the matter, that I don't know. That none of us know what they're actually doing. Except for the people that are doing it. But what it looks like is a propaganda style event coordinated with this UFO disclosure. And from a religious standpoint, we know that the belief in aliens and the belief in the round world, the belief in space is a religion in itself, is a secret religion that has been designed by the same forces for the past 400 years. The UFO videos that I did a couple days ago go over that. And then I also have a video series called The Secret Religion, which I hope you guys check out, right? And so, with that being said, we know that this is the plan for tomorrow for the pagan believers, the Satanists, the occultists. We know that that is the plan going forward. So what do? We watch and we make ourselves ready. We make ourselves ready spiritually, by keeping ourselves prayed up, by keeping the commandments, by walking in a righteous path. But we make ourselves ready physically, because if people are in the line of fire, that means you should get out. We know that Babylon is set to be destroyed. That means you should get out. I wouldn't be in Rome. I wouldn't be in America. I wouldn't be in England. I wouldn't be in any of these places which have a gang of nuclear weapons pointed at them. I wouldn't be in any of these places where there are major religious, major financial, major military industrial complexes, right? And Babylon, we know as America, is at the center of all of that. We know from, I don't know if you guys have seen this old documentary called Empire of the City. I don't recommend that you guys watch it because it's so filled with lies that you don't believe the true things that are there. But there's actually a good bit of truth at the beginning of the documentary. And in the Empire of the City, what it discloses is that the world is really ruled out of three places, right? The most decision making is done through three places. And the thing about these three places, it says it seems like CERN is not talked about anymore. Yeah, so here's the thing. We talked about this, we talked about this earlier. So CERN, right, is supposed to be a collider, right? Supposed to be a machine that's able to power. We all know what CERN is. Able to power molecules, microscopic molecules, single atoms, into a tube and get the speeds all the way up in order to crash them into one another and see what things fly out of it, right? That's the surface explanation for it. But what we know is true is that for some reason, looking back at the style of rituals that people have done in the United States, that explosions, large explosions, are said by these people to be able to manifest entities, right? And so we think of it as, okay, some sort of scientific endeavor that opens up some sort of portal. But what it is the same type of explosive working that nuclear weapons are designed for, and that, that these, uh, with, what's his name? We just talked about him, Jack Parsons, these explosions and rituals that they used to do just on a minor level. And so whatever that does, it, I believe, opens up some way to release spirits into this world. And what we've discussed before is that the spirits that are in the world aren't dangerous physically to us, right? They're not going to be, it's not going to be like, Pacific Rim, where these giant monsters come out of a crack in the ground, right? Not yet. It's gonna be like that at some point. If you've read Revelation 9, I don't think we're there yet. But what happens is ideas come into the forefront. False ideas come into the forefront. So when CERN is activated, when the portals are open in Rome, when the Babylonian gates are put in New York City, when the Pergamum seat of, Zeus, false deity name aside, is put in Germany, in Munich or wherever it is now, somewhere in Germany, Berlin, I think, we see that as not just uh, an event to happen or something that's going on or a scientific endeavor, but also as a door for new ideas to be presented. Do you see what I'm saying? If the entity is let into the world, if the spirit of truth comes into the world through Messiah, what kind of spirits do the devil bring, right? Those would be spirits of deception. So when these portals are open, we shouldn't expect to see a ghost. What we should expect to see is lies being presented as the truth and people believing them because of the delusions, because of the propaganda that's already in the world, but stronger. Do you see what I'm saying? But stronger. These events are strengthening people's resolve. For instance, like Trump, like being Trump getting shot in the ear. People that know that's, he's full of crap. He didn't get shot in no ear. We know the story behind that. We know about MK Ultra. We know that you can do all of these different things with people and program them to do these things, and we know that, right? But do the Trumpers know that? Do the MAGA, do they know that? No, their resolve is strengthened because of the ritual. The ritual doesn't work on us because we know better, but it works on them, and it makes them love their dictator even more, right? And so when these events happen and we believe them to be one thing and they're not, that is strengthened with these events, right? If the history of Babylon, is being presented in New York City as an art form and people are awing and oohing at it, but we know it's the gates of Babylon, which is evil, showing you that New York is Babylon, then that propaganda, that strength and that power of that symbol is working on people, is, working against them for us because it identifies who they are, but for other people, it's working on them, right? It's the psychological aspect of it that's spiritual, right? The word psychology means the study of the soul, right? Psych is soul. Do you see what I'm saying? So the soul, the entities that, the part of you that is non-physical is affected by it. And guess what? The things that are inventing these ideas that are associated with the events or the idols or whatever are psyches themselves. They're made out of soul or spirit or whatever you want to call it. That's what they're made out of. So their influence on you is psychological, right? That's the only way that they have power over you, is by affecting how you believe. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what I think this is doing. Now, don't get me wrong, again, one day these things are going to be physical, and one day they're going to be on the earth, and one day people's hearts are going to fail when they see them. That's going to happen. And that may happen in the near future because I haven't been given the day or the time. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that what this is? I don't think so. I don't believe that we are in that part of the Revelation timeline, but I do think those days are coming, and at a even in more increased pace, because we see this. Oh, let me see. We see the system, being put in place. And I guess I was talking about Empire of the City, and I do want to get to that before I get out of here. I've got 6%, you guys. It says, it seems CERN is not being talked about. I wonder what they are up to nowadays. Yeah, we know who they are because they were doing the ritual to the pagan, you know, goddess out in front of CERN. Do you see what I'm saying? What does the pagan goddess ritual that's supposed to be a prank have to do with all the technology inside? It's one for one, right? And so we know, to get back to Empire of the City just for a moment, we know that the world is run through Jerusalem by the Ashkenazi Jews, the Ashkenazim, who are Gog and Magog. We know that. We know the world is run through Jerusalem in these three places. And the three places are Vatican City, Washington, D.C., and inner city London. I've talked about it before. These three places are their own separate countries. Washington, D.C. is unto itself not a state, but it's a district, right? It's its own country. There are different rules and laws there. Do you see what I'm saying? And they make the laws for the entire rest of the country of the United States, right? Vatican City is its own country, right? It has its own status within Rome. It has its own police system, mail. It has its own everything. It's an altogether entity unto itself. Inner city London, the same thing. You guys don't know this maybe, but a lot of the financial districts of Europe are in inner city London. And it is in itself not controlled by the crown, as its own entity. It has its own controlling faction, which is actually called the crown. But it's not the crown, it's a group of men. That's not the king. Do you see what I'm saying? So in these three districts, you could say, the world is run financially, spiritually, and militarily, with the military being in DC, the spiritual force being in Vatican City, and then the financial force in London. And it's all being run by the Ashkenazim in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the center of all things. Who controls Jerusalem controls the world, right? And we know, that Arthur Balfour, on behalf of the United Kingdom military, Parliament, signed over control of Jerusalem to Lionel Rothschild in over 100 years ago. So we know for a fact who runs all of these different sectors. And they all are factions of Gog and Magog. We know in London, they are descendants of the Brits, right? Which are not the Brits, they are the Angles and the Saxons, right? Two Germanic tribes that are from Gog and Magog. We know that in America, they're the descendants of the Angles and the Saxons, right? That came together in England, Gog and Magog. We know in Rome, they are the Lombards and the other groups of Germanic tribes that conquered Rome and kicked the Romans out, killed the Romans, and they, took their women. This is what barbarian Germanic tribes do, and that they're Gog and Magog too. Ever since the fall of Rome in about 500 AD, if Rome failed in 500 AD, how do you still have a pope and a Catholic Church that was already established? Who is in that position now? It's Gog and Magog. So these are the factions that run the world right now. And they run the world in factions like a kingdom that is partly divided and partly strong and partly weak, like the feet of iron and miry clay, right? This is Book of Daniel. We know we're in the last kingdom because this is what we see. And we know the last kingdom Daniel is talking about is Gog and Magog because of Ezekiel, right? We've got to put these things together to figure out where we are, to understand what we're looking at. And that's why they're working together in such a way You see, they're working together, but they don't look like they're working together. That's why they're working together in such a way, because they're all descendants of the same people. And these people have been predicted to control the world at the end of the world, and they know it. They've got the books, they've got the religion right there that tells who they are. And it's the Ashkenazim that's pulling the strings behind all that, so that they can sit back and say it was the Catholics, it was the Americans, it was the British. Do you see what I mean? Okay, you guys, if anybody has any questions, really, this is where our concept of religion and society comes from today, is the Catholic Church. So, with them, being active right now in world events, I do think that it is something that we need to stand up and pay attention to. But I also think that it is a psychological event, and we should watch it with an understanding that whatever conceptually comes out of this was meant to be for, some sort of propagandistic understanding in the world going forward. And that's what I'm looking to happen, And I think that it's also in conjunction with whatever diseases are getting ready to be spread, because there's getting ready to be some more diseases, y'all. Because this is, we can see it coming. We see it coming. Okay, you guys, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Peace and blessings to everybody. I have a lot of gloom and doom usually when I do these. But in reality, if you are walking in the commandments, walking in righteousness, if you're prayed up, if you've got your family and you've got a way to protect yourself, then, hallelujah and Elohim speed to you, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's all you can do in these last days, is hold on, get safe, pray, and watch. Shalom, shalom, you guys.